This video delves deeply into the conflict between id, ego, and superego from Freud's perspective. Who truly holds the reins in your mind? The answer might surprise you. There is a war inside you. But this war is invisible from the outside. You don't hear the sound of weapons, nor does blood seem to spill. This war is a silent but shaking conflict that rages within your mind. According to Sigmund Freud, personality is shaped right in the middle of this war. Three forces are constantly in conflict: id, ego, and superego. The id represents our instincts. It is our most primitive side. Hunger, anger, lust, fear, emotions that are hard to suppress live here. The id shouts, "I want," immediately, now, without question. The id operates according to the pleasure principle. It pursues whatever it desires. Logic, ethics, or social norms do not matter to the id. It wants, and wants again. It is the source of all desires. But humans cannot live by the id alone. There is society, rules, responsibility. This is where the ego steps in. The ego acts according to the reality principle. It takes the id's demands and tries to make them compatible with the outside world. In a way, it acts like a diplomat. It tries to balance the desires inside with the rules outside. The ego seeks solutions. The id says, "I want this." The superego says, "No, that is wrong." The ego must find a way between these two. It makes rational decisions to reduce conflict, but this is not always easy. And finally, the superego. The superego represents our conscience, social values, and moral norms. The concepts of right and wrong we internalize from childhood reside here. The superego wages war against the id's primal desires. It says, "Don't do that." It whispers in our ears, "Shameful, sinful, bad." But sometimes it becomes so oppressive that the person feels guilty for their own desires. This is exactly where the inner war begins. If the id desires, the superego judges, and the ego loses balance, psychological problems can arise. Because the ego is constantly caught between the two, sometimes the feelings you have suppressed return as dreams. Sometimes behind a behavior is actually the id's cry, or the superego gradually drains you from within. Freud says, to understand a person, one must look at the state of these three structures. Because personality is born from the balance of this triple structure. A healthy individual does not suppress the id, but is not its slave either. They listen to their superego, but are not crushed under its burden. And the ego draws a path compatible with reality by balancing the two. But what happens if this balance is lost? If the ego weakens, either the id takes over, surrendering you to your impulses, or the superego dominates, overwhelming you with constant guilt, and you are inside this war. Every moment, when making a decision, struggling with a feeling, wanting something badly but trying not to. These three voices clash inside you: id, ego, and superego. Who will win? We don't know. But Freud tells us this: if you understand the war within yourself, you are one step closer to true freedom.